Hey everyone, this is episode 5 of the David Seaman Hour. I'm going to save my self-promotional rambling for later on in the show. Go ahead and find us on iTunes, though, David Seaman Hour. We have a very special guest right now. RT anchor Abby Martin joins us by phone. How's it going?
It's going well, David.
So, So I want to talk about the issue of the day, which, of course, is that NDAA ruling.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's excellent news. I'm glad that someone's looking out for the people of this country, since the government clearly wasn't. Obama tried to block it, which really shows you glaringly that he wanted it the whole time. So all people are apologizing for him, saying he wouldn't use it.
What were they thinking? Like, even former Bush administration officials have said that imprisonment without trial of American citizens, this goes far beyond anything they would have tried or accepted.
Which just set us back about 8 centuries, David. It's no big deal.
8 centuries? That's hope and change.
It's the most fundamental right of human beings to have, right to trial and not just be locked up in a cold cell with the key thrown away. What's the big deal?
Yeah, I mean, It's better than Romney anyways. It's better than a guy who hasn't been elected yet and would probably do the same thing.
And what kills me about that whole thing, I mean, it's amazing that this happened. It's great news. But, the whole NDA thing is just so weird that people said, well, Obama wouldn't use it. It's like, well, it doesn't matter because future administrations can use it. I mean, he instated something that is going to be used. So it doesn't matter if he uses it or the next, warmongering mass murderer is in office and uses it. It's just it's there. He signed it. He wants it. That's all that matters. I mean, there you go.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I tell people who are having issues even imagining how this could be used, I tell them that the intentions don't really matter. It'd be like your best friend coming up to you and saying, from here on out, your girlfriend's going to be sleeping in my bed with me, but don't worry, nothing's going to come of it, nothing's going to happen. And it's like, well, why are you proposing this in the first place? Or for warrantless wiretapping, the NSA's program, it'd be like your landlord drilling a peephole into your shower and saying, oh, it's not a big deal as long as they don't use it to prosecute you. It's like, wait a second, it's still a violation of your rights.
Yeah. Well, if you're not doing anything wrong, David, then why do you care that they're watching you in the shower and recording everything you do and data mining everything you do and say and go? I mean, come on, you're not doing anything wrong, then what do you have to hide? Dude, that's the most absurd argument I've ever heard, because it's the chilling effect is what's really profoundly in effect in this country. When you know that you're being spied on from everywhere and everything, I mean, you're not going to dissent as much. And that's the real underlying problem with the surveillance state that we live under.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of journalists have to get on airplanes on a regular basis to do their jobs. And some of those journalists who have stepped on the wrong toes now get pulled aside every single time they get on a flight. That one journalist who did the NSA doc on the New York Times website, she's been detained 40 times by the TSA and questioned. And at a certain point, they're able to silence dissent, because anybody who wants to keep a job is going to say, hey, I need a right to be able to fly to where I need to go to, or I'd like to be able to walk down the sidewalk without being questioned. It's creepy stuff. It's almost one of the things I wanted to say about you, we sort of just jumped into this NDAA thing because it's breaking news. But one of the things I want to say about you is your new TV show is kind of you're like a TV anchor in a movie. You really care. Like in Batman or X-Men or something. and the anchor is can Professor X and his band of mutants save us in time? Stay tuned. That's what you're like. You actually realize the significance of some of these stories. And you turn to some of the other cable channels, and they're like these plastic people who have no sense of priorities or perspective. They'll mention something about a bunch of kids getting vaporized in Afghanistan by some drone attack, and then they're like, but moving on, Rihanna is now in a tweet war with paparazzi photographers. And you're like, how are those two things even deserving of the same amount of airtime?
Oh, it is amazing, and I'm just so honored to be given the platform to just speak my mind. I mean, I've been speaking out against Empire and imperialism for the last 10 years as an activist and as a media activist, and now to be able to articulate the things that I feel like are so wrong, and to just let my passion out there is truly an incredible opportunity, and I really do care. I mean, I write everything that I read, and I really cared about saving this country, and to me, I mean, it's just a matter of waking people up in time to do so.
Yeah, totally. And I like what you said about saving this country. Like, I'm not doing the stuff I do to be like some kind of stick in the mud or to just be a perennial critic. I'm doing it because these things are so bad that people need to know about them, and they need to speak out. They really do. Like, I think I've started following John Cusack on Twitter recently, and that dude is so outraged over the things that this government is trying to do over NDAA. And he had this great tweet. I don't have it in front of me, but people were saying, like, stick to being an actor. You don't know what you're talking about. And he was like, I act, I direct, I produce, I make things, but I still have an opinion as an American citizen about where this country is going, and, like, you need to speak up. He told people to speak up. And that's so true. We're at that point now where if you don't speak, we're going to be in deep trouble.
Yeah, it's like that quote from the Nazi era, you know, where first they came for the socialists. I think I tweeted this at you, actually, but it's so true. I mean, you know, they're coming for the Muslims now. There's, you know, this warrantless spying, all of this stuff also in Libya. I mean, it's reported that the same people who attacked this embassy in Libya are the same people that we helped prop up there with, you know, the, quote, humanitarian bombing there. So it's just like, I mean, when are we going to learn that this is not, that we should not be bombing? Can I swear on here, by the way? Sorry, I was just going to say a swear word. But we should not be bombing these countries. We should not be propping up these regimes, funding one side or the other. I mean, it's so complicated. And then you have Romney coming out and just politicizing the issue immediately and being like, you know, how dare you sympathize with the attackers? And the Cairo embassy tweeted, they were just like, we're not going to condone bigotry. Like, this video that's completely anti-Islam, that's not right. And then you have us assassinating judge, jury, executioner assassinating al-Awlaki and his 16-year-old son because they incited hate speech, but it's perfectly okay to have this anti-Islam movie being spread around, inciting hatred, and then giving us the preemption to go in there with fleets and Marines and drones. I mean, the hypocrisy is so astounding, I really can't even handle it anymore.
Yeah, one of my big issues is at a time when we have this level of unemployment, and where a lot of people around my age, I don't know how old you are, but you're probably around the same age.
How old are you? I'm 28.
I'm 26. So
nice.
A lot of people are like just stuck in this kind of vicious cycle where they have a lot of debt from left over from college or from whatever. And maybe if they're lucky, they get some low-paying job, and they remain this kind of indentured servant forever. And that was never supposed to be what this generation was entitled to. You know, like we were supposed to carry on the torch and be the next generation, but instead we've been crushed economically. And instead of using that money here at home, it's being used for military campaigns and nation building abroad. And I don't see why we're in a country where their response to a stupid offensive YouTube video is let's go find some Americans and kill them, instead of let's thumb this down on YouTube and watch something else. You know,
right.
It's so crazy to me that we're even in these places in the first place. We have no role there, and it's a waste of money, and it puts people in harm's way. I don't get it. The same thing with Afghanistan. I don't understand why we're there.
Yeah, I mean, well, I covered this yesterday. I think that we're there to sustain the $88 billion opium trade that's annually. I mean, black market's huge. Drug. If you're looking at going to war for resources, then you cannot exclude the black market of drugs. I mean, we just signed a strategic pact to keep troops there till 2024. I mean, this is how long of a vision we have for Afghanistan. I mean, twice as long as anyone could have ever imagined that we would be there, and potentially longer than that. I mean, 90% of the world's heroin comes from the country. So it's a total chess game for these people. It's a grand chessboard. Is that
really what it's about, though?
Looking out for us, they're wrong.
Are we really over there to just protect this crazy drug trade in Afghanistan?
I don't think that that's the only reason. I think that we also want to militarily surround Iran. But I mean, if you're looking at the initial reason that they told us that they were going in to fight the Taliban and get bin Laden, that doesn't make any sense. First of all,
right.
The logic of going into a country and occupying and invading it to find one person when we know the Guardian released the CIA confession, or that the CIA set up a sting operation to do the bin Laden confession tape in 2001. So if we had him then to purportedly get this confession from him, we could have just arrested him. So why did we just let him kind of flee around this country for the last decade plus? It does not make any sense. Nothing about it makes sense. I mean, when you're looking at the reason that we're engaged in these military zones, it's much bigger than what they say. Obviously, we already know that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a complete waste of money. But the real truth of it is that our country runs on military machinery. That's where our economy runs on war. So they need to keep these proverbial enemies alive. They need to keep this fear alive. They need to keep the people into submission to not wake up to the fact that we're in an encroaching police state. All of our liberties are gone. The same liberties that they said those people attacked us for, well, guess what? We don't have them anymore, and they're slowly going. It's going to be too late. I mean, unless it's seriously just shocking that people still aren't awake to this reality that's happening.
Right, and you're not like some fringe person. I mean, you're a TV anchor and you see what's happening, and it's almost like if they can't continue this war machine overseas, they're just going to bring it here, and that's what's going on. Like on your show today, you had a segment about RFID chips in middle schools now in their school IDs that are tracking these kids every moment of the day, including logging their bathroom visits. That's creepy as fuck. I mean, that is ridiculous.
Well, when the surveillance state technology is so expansive, it's the insatiable urge to control. I mean, these people can't help themselves. It's like this technology exists, it's getting more expansive, and so they're just seizing upon it and using it. Well, it's easier to just track the kids. Let's just put RFID chips in the kids. It's like, you heard this 50 years ago that it was such a conspiracy theory, everyone's going to be chipped. Well, we don't have to be chipped when it's in our passports and our IDs. It's still happening. I mean, it sounded crazy decades ago, and it's happening now.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is your smartphone. People don't realize just how much information it is soaking up at all times. And you need a smartphone. I mean, it does so many great things. Like, I always have my phone on me to read emails and tweet stuff out. But it's a two-way street. It's also giving the government a lot of information. And people don't realize how easy it is for a local police department or a federal agency to just get all of your text messages, all of your calls and locations with very little red tape.
Yeah, and like you said before, they're going to bring it here at home. Look at what they're already doing. I mean, they're making so much military equipment, and as these wars, quote, are scaling down, which is really not the case in a lot of these places, we have, 50,000 plus military contractors there, still privatized, people running around, creating havoc with no allegiance to the Constitution. But aside from that, all the machinery that we're using abroad is being given to small towns. I mean, Keene, New Hampshire has a tank, and the community's like, we don't need a tank patrolling our streets. We're like a tiny community. And so they're just militarizing the shit out of all of these small communities all around the country because they know that there's something happening. They know that there's a smell of dissent, and people are slowly waking up, and they are preparing very well for it. So it's just a matter of when this is all going to come to a head. I mean, I really don't. I hope that it doesn't, but I mean, they are preparing for something.
Yeah, and that's really what disgusted me more than anything was this crazy unconstitutional buildup to combat what they perceive as the possibility of dissent in the near future. I mean, I was not a part of Occupy or anything like that. Like, I'm a tech entrepreneur, and I'm actually pretty conservative in a lot of ways. But I saw the way these protesters were being treated, just having the shit kicked out of them for no reason, and having live streamers, their cameras taken away and being intimidated, and even credentialed NBC reporters in New York. One guy, Chris, I forget his last name, but I was seeing this stuff, and I was like, is this America? And every second you're watching it on Ustream, and you think, okay, this is going to be on CNN like any minute now. And you have the TV on in the background, and they just keep going on about Kim Kardashian and some new diet and some other bullshit. And you're like, how is this happening? It's like you're just totally railroading the truth and paving it over. And meanwhile, people are being beaten up in the cold. and these anchors are laughing about something that's totally nonsense. And that's what really got me on the path of. And then it's hard, once you go down this rabbit hole, I think it's hard not to see what's going on. Because on Twitter, people are sharing information all day long. And you see HR 347 criminalizing certain forms of peaceful protest. And you couple that with NDAA, and you couple that with the billions of dollars we're spending on warrantless spying of American citizens, it makes you wonder, what is going on here? The government is seizing powers that it should not have.
Absolutely. I mean, my friend, I was in Oakland, actually, when the police state cracked down in my backyard, and that really woke me up to the militarization of the police force right in my own neighborhood. I mean, it seriously felt like we were in a police state. I mean, there was like thousands and thousands of cops. There was an encampment of about maybe 150 people. The cops outnumbered everyone, like 12 to 1. There was 6 military helicopters flying around the city. This is going on for a month. And it just became, and honestly, at the second or third day, I felt like this is just the way it was. I was just like, well, it was almost like become commonplace now that these helicopters, and it's dehumanizing, it's completely terrifying. And it got to a point, and my friend was also just filming a line of police and got shot, targeted with a rubber bullet just for filming that. And so you have the establishment trying to control the narrative as much as possible. Of course, they don't want to cover the reality of the situation. They just want to kind of talk about Occupy Wall Street protesters as just some dirty hippies with no vision. That, I mean, argue all you want about their message, but the way that the crackdowns happened against peaceful opposition is absolutely outrageous. I mean, it came full boot just down.
Right.
And we know it came from the top, which is just hilarious. And you have Van Jones trying to, steal the 99% message and re-elect Obama. I'm just like, how is this happening right now? I mean, it's insane, David. But yeah, I did see it firsthand. I was out there trying to report what was going on. There was no television anchors, no news at all. I was the only one out there pretty much when these riot cops were shooting at us and throwing smoke bombs and tear gas grenades at us. And I was just between them and a line of protesters, and I was right next to Scott Olson when he got hit. And there was no one out there. I mean, what are these people doing? They're not covering news.
Yeah,
they're sitting in there in their air-conditioned offices just talking about celebrity gossip. I mean, it's completely outrageous. It's not news at all, and that's where new media, citizen journalism, live streaming really is the future. And history will no longer be told by the winners. It's just going to be told as is, and that scares the shit out of the establishment.
Yeah, I think so. And one thing I wanted to mention here is that those of us who are defending liberty and people who are reporting on these issues as you do, I think we all need to network and stand together. It's not a competition. There are certain people where I keep getting sent their articles by readers, and they're like, "Oh, you should do an interview with him sometime." And I'm like, I've never even talked to this guy before, and it's amazing that you can travel in the same circles and not really know some of the people who are covering the same things or fighting for the same things. And I feel like the community of people who are actually doing real journalism, people like you and people like Glenn Greenwald over at The Guardian, it's such a small community that all of you guys need to band together and become like one brand. Because, not one brand, but one community, because there's no competition. Like, this is such a tiny little species in the bigger pool of media slime that to crawl out of that slime, I feel like you need to hold hands almost. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man, and I'm glad that we're networking. I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing and reaching out to people, because I totally agree. I mean, we need to be in contact. We need to be helping each other. We need to be helping grow this community, because that's really, I almost feel like I'm in a self-perpetual feedback loop sometimes, because I don't know, who I reach. I just put the information out there and hope that you can't really follow up with what people do with information that gets to them. So it's hard for me sometimes to feel like there is an impact, but I know, of course, everything you do has a reaction, and everything you do has some sort of positive thing that will come out of it. But it is difficult, and I think that we should stand together, obviously, as just a source of support more than anything, to keep, to keep this alive, to keep the movement and resistance alive, no matter what happens, because we are, who knows what's going to happen. I mean, this NDAA thing is a great victory. I don't know how Obama is going to react to it, because we know that he is not going to be happy.
He won't need to. He won't need to.
That's going to mirror it.
He won't need to react to it because the media is not going to talk about this. And even the AP story today that was carried in local newspapers like the Las Vegas Sun, the headline of the article was so obscure that nobody who didn't already know everything about NDAA, they just would not care about this. It's like, oh, there were some parts of a terror law that were blocked today by a New York judge. Who's going to click on that? Who even cares? Like, it doesn't put it into perspective and say this thing would have allowed them to detain journalists without a trial and political dissidents, potentially. I'm going to let you go soon because I know you've had like a long day probably, and want to get this up as soon as possible. But I really, seeing things like you getting a TV show and seeing all the stuff that Glenn Greenwald has been putting out in his columns lately gives me a lot of hope that the tide is turning. And even this podcast, like we just went up yesterday on iTunes, and overnight we crashed briefly because we got about so far with 60 gigabytes of downloads. That's a crazy amount of downloads. So
That's awesome.
People are doing their part. They're spreading the word and trying to build support behind these new media shows. And I feel like we just need to keep doing that because if we get to the point where nobody believes the nonsense on CNN anymore, they're all going to turn to your show, and it's going to be just a much healthier discussion, or at least a discussion. We don't even have that at this point.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for linking up, getting me on just to, express my grievances and just putting the message out there. I think it's just really important that people reach out. Don't let fear control you. I mean, this is about embracing and engaging with the reality in which we live. It may not be pretty at times, but if you sit in fear and let that stifle you, then they win. I mean, whoever they are, the powers that be. And the power lies within us, and we can change the trajectory of everything that's wrong. And if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I totally have faith in humanity, and I have faith in this movement and the truth, and I embrace that, and that's what I strive to do every day. So thank you, David, for doing your part. Keep up the great work, and let's definitely talk soon.
All right, sounds good. And people can find you where? Where's the best place? On Twitter?
At Abby Martin on Twitter, MediaRoots.org, and RT America. We have Breaking the Set is the name of my show, and you can check it out on YouTube. All of the episodes are archived there, so check it out.
All right, great. Thanks again.
Thanks, David. Talk to you.
Bye. All right, so she's off the phone, but I want to go on for a couple more minutes because the recorder is rolling and I have more stuff to say. And I just didn't want to leave her on forever because I think she was just getting home from doing her TV show. But sort of segging from what she was saying about people doing their part, don't just cave in to positive thinking. Don't be one of those people that I have to interact with from time to time who say, I read your article and I'd like to do something, but I don't want to get involved in all this. It makes me feel dirty. I don't like to see bad things or see my government doing bad things. And I think that's really the wrong attitude. When you see a problem, you do your best to network with other people who are interested in fixing it, and you fix it. That's what America was built on. That's what America is about, is seeing and identifying challenges and then meeting those challenges head on and not giving up. And that's what we need to do. We don't realize how powerful we are as individuals. The mainstream media is dying out. Things like these podcasts and things like new media outlets like the Huffington Post and Business Insider and RT America, these places are emerging as the new information centers. And so we need to embrace them, and we need to continue to fight to get things like NDAA into the household mainstream consciousness where people are just, they're not told what's going on. I've talked to people who predominantly watch Fox News and MSNBC, and they're not bad people. They're just people who haven't, basically, the only thing that's different between them and me is that I have a few podcasts on my iPhone that they don't have, and I've spent a little bit of time on Twitter researching these issues. That doesn't make me some kind of genius to make them an idiot, but it does make them someone who needs to be told, this is what you should be focused on right now, because it's extremely important. And again, don't cave into that notion that you're just in this little positive thinking bubble and you don't want to see anything negative because it's going to upset your little world. Your little world is an illusion anyway. Your life is a finite experience. You better use it for some good while you're here, or at the very least, use it so that the next generation has an America that they can be proud of also. Because, you don't know how long you're going to be here for, and you don't know what kind of influence you're going to have. But at the very least, you can speak out against things like imprisonment without trial and drone strikes and secret kill lists. These are crazy science fiction things that were never supposed to be a part of the American dream and the American experience. Thank you for listening. Have a great night.